I'm just heading out to cut wood. I try to get a load every day. But I was going to talk about this missile strike in Poland. There's a lot of that I find troubling. And I get the feeling they're just going to say, oh, it was a misfunction, missile went astray. But there's a lot of problems with that theory. And they know. I mean, they have the satellite images from when this was launched to when it hit. There was an AWACS plane that's been going up and down that border all the time. They were well aware of it. I find it surprising that, in theory, they have a Patriot missile system set up along there. For some reason, they didn't even pick it up. But the most troubling thing is I keep hearing reports that this missile strike was like 2 to 3 hours after the barrage of missiles came from Russia. So to say that they fired this at an incoming missile and that it went astray, that doesn't make any sense. Plus, these S-300 surface-to-air missiles are designed, if they miss their target, they're supposed to self-destruct. Though they can be put in a mode to be used surface to surface where they won't self-destruct. They will just go until they run out of fuel or pick up another target. But they're purposely designed that way so you don't have accidents like that. But something was different about this. The idea that this malfunction, well, now, what it hit, people can say, oh, it hit on a farm, it hit a tractor. What it hit was a grain drying facility. They were drying corn. Now, a lot of farmers have them, elevators all have them. And the ones here at least burn propane. And they put out quite a heat signature. So the odds are that that missile was still active and it homed in on that heat signature from that grain dryer. But the time, like I say, it doesn't make sense. And they have the proof of this from, like, the AWACS. They know exactly, they watched it go. But now they're trying to say, oh, it was an accident. I don't think this was an accident. I think this was an intentional thing to try to get NATO involved. That is what I suspect. But, I mean, it's very easy. All they have to do is come clean with what the AWACS saw. But I doubt that they'll do it. In fact, now Poland is talking, and it isn't just me saying this. There are people in Poland that are saying, hey, this was not an accident. This was not a malfunction. This was a deliberate attempt to escalate things by the Ukrainians. But they are prone to accidents. I mean, the Ukrainians, a lot of the damage that gets done to civilian infrastructure in Ukraine is from them attempting to shoot down missiles. And then they try to blame it on Russia, but it isn't Russia, it's them. In their just failed attempts. But I find it interesting. But now Poland is hitting, because they were on board. Oh boy, Article 5, everybody was on board with this. But then the proof is laying there, and I don't know that that would have come out, except that there were civilians who actually took pictures of this and put these pictures online, and everybody said, "Hey, that's an S-300. You know, what's that doing there?" You know, Russians aren't using them. Well, they have some yet, but that's Ukraine has those. And there's no way that an S-300 could have gone from any place that Russia is, or even Belarus, to strike all the way over in Poland. There would be no sense to it, and it couldn't possibly go that far. They have a rather limited range. But now Poland is talking, they better move some missile defense systems into Ukraine. Well, I've said this before, Poland is itching to take that west end of Ukraine, and if they can do it, claiming to be in self-defense or in defense of Ukraine, they could pull that off. But I'm sure eventually there's going to be Poles fighting Ukrainians. This has actually happened already on the battle lines on the other side of the country, where the Ukrainians were trying to make the Poles attack someplace or another, and the Poles were reluctant because it was like a suicide mission. So the Ukrainians turned on them. Well, the Poles turned on the Ukrainians and shot a bunch of them, and then more Ukrainians came and shot the Poles. So they're thinning each other out, which is a hell of a way to work. But they have a grudge match going. And like I say, Poland really claims that west end of Ukraine. So I think this is an opportunity for them to get their toe in the door, sort of, just pull some missile batteries in there. And it's funny, like this missile that hit in Poland, the odds are this was actually one that was given to Ukraine from Poland or one of the other NATO countries, because they were all donating their S-300 systems, because most of Ukraine's got blown up right away. So odds are it was one of their missiles, and they should easily be able to figure it out, but you'll never hear about it. They just want to write this off and say, oh, it was an unfortunate accident. I don't believe it was. Like I say, that thing would have been programmed to not self-destruct. I don't see it happening accidentally. I think there's a good likelihood that this was done intentionally. But when the evidence came out, I mean, there's, because we were hesitant to admit that it wasn't, and a lot of other countries, man, they were on board. But then, the pictures come out, and common sense tells people, okay, this ain't what happened. But if they really want to clear it up, all you got to do is show the records from the radar, because, like I say, they had the AWACS right there. They're constantly there, back and forth all the time. It's a funny thing, too. I was thinking about this. The one day I said about how I saw a flash in my mirror and I thought they had taken out Sioux Falls. There's a thing about Sioux Falls. Remember, this started like 2-3 years ago. Google got into these loon balloons. They were going to make these balloons that they could fly over Africa to give everybody in Africa internet access. That was the big scheme. Well, that never happened. They made the balloons, and they're based out of South Dakota, but they're not going to Africa. There's some of them that are over in Europe. I think there's 2 of them over there now. I think there's like 9 of them altogether, and they can be up for like 30 days at a time or something. But they're used here for surveillance in this country, for listening in on your communications. It's not for Africans. I mean, this got taken over right away by the military. It doesn't have anything to do with Google anymore, especially, helping Africans. But that's when it was developed. That was the big theme, going to get them Africans online. But if you watch, you'll see them. They launch them in South Dakota, test them out around there, and then they can move them around by different heights, get in different prevailing winds. So they kind of drift around, but there's always some hanging around South Dakota. Well, same thing like we in Grand Forks is it's where they do a lot of work with the drones. So there's always drones flying around, but that's where they work on them. But it's just surveillance of you. When they're real high altitude, though, like I say, they drop them down to catch the wind to go to where they want them to go. Well, that brings up another thing, like I said about Musk with his Starlink setup. They're using them over in Ukraine, but now you look at all the rioting that's going in Iran, they're using them in Iran too. But you can bet, like this S-300 system is the earlier version of their air defense system, but now they have the S-500s. And they claim that these S-500s can reach the altitude of these Starlink satellites because they're not very high. So if they start going blind, if Russia's going to make any big move, the first thing they'll do is they will take out those Starlinks. It wouldn't surprise me. But if you start hearing, because now I think they're playing around with jamming them. But if they're really going to make a move, I think they could just take them out. I don't think that would be a problem. But it's funny how, like when I say about Google with their loon balloons, a lot of that stuff, they're getting funded, this DARPA, to develop that stuff, and they're always saying, "Oh, that's for." I got distracted here. I just see the deer. Well, the horses see the deer too. Can't quite see where he went though. Oh well. But it's got me curious. Deer tend to, when it starts snowing like this, they hole up places. And my little creek bottom down here, a lot of times where they end up. And usually, if you're wondering where they are, you can watch where the horses pick up on that stuff so quick. If something moves, the horses are right on it. So usually, if I see the horses staring off into some area, I know there's something there they saw that got their interest. And it caught my interest. But a lot of this stuff that comes out of DARPA, it's defense agency funding. They always claim it's for peaceful uses. That isn't the idea. Given when they made them little robotic dogs, that, for police and, fire and rescue and, we can mount a gun on them. Yeah. That's the way it works. It reminds me of that Terminator movie.